Welcome, everybody. Now, we are living in extraordinary times, a time which prophecies from different cultures around the world have foretold. And at some level, consciously or unconsciously, we're all being affected by what's going on. Everywhere we're seeing rising levels of mental ill health, high levels of stress and anxiety and fear about the future. And every one of us is having our comfort zone shaken. Physical health is also being affected. And we're seeing deeply ingrained patterns of behaviour, such as eating meat, being questioned more and more. There's also a greater awareness of dreams coming through. And many people think they have a message for us. So not only are we becoming more aware of all of this, but also more sensitive to lies, with light being shone into some very, very dark corners in our society at the moment. And our own ability to lie, those daily little convenient white lies, we're becoming more and more uncomfortable with those. The search for truth is important now. Many people are also reporting feeling their senses expanding. They're becoming more intuitive and more empathic and more aware of other dimensions. So something huge is happening out there, and the majority have an atavistic sense of something coming, as if some big event is drawing nearer. We have energy workers and grid workers and geomancers and light workers all aware of this, and how there are increasing levels of synchronicity and a great wave of change sweeping through. So what is it all about? Well, today you're going to get some idea, hopefully. You're going to become aware of how where you're living is playing a part in all of these unsettled feelings that you're having, and how this is very much a part of something which is unfolding on a cosmic scale. We're at the beginning of something which is part of a great universal cycle, with super waves of galactic energy penetrating the natural shields of not just our solar system, but also our planet. And these are only going to continue to build in intensity. So we need to understand what's happening, and we need to understand what we have to do to come through this intact. And here to help us with this is someone who is a geobiologist, a documentary filmmaker, and also the author of several books. He is Rory Duff. Rory, welcome.
Thank you very much, Saira, for having me to interview. That was very kind of you. Thank you.
Can we start? We need to talk about all sorts of things to get a handle on this, but can we start by just understanding what geobiology is?
Yeah, it's a recognized science, which is an offshoot from geology, which started to look at how life affected the Earth and how the Earth affects life. Mm-hmm. In the early days, it was about looking at bacteria and how it created oxygen environments millions of years ago. But now, from my perspective, it's looking at what's actually going on in the inner core of the Earth, and how that is creating sound and electromagnetic frequencies on the surface. And specifically, with relevance to this talk just now, it's about where we live with regards to these low frequency sounds and electromagnetic images.
These earth energies, as you said, play a big part in this. And I know that one of the things that you've done is you've actually put together the first classification of earth energies. So can you just describe a little bit about what they're about to people who don't know too much about it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this stemmed from early curiosity into what these earth energies were, and a mapping project that I put together in my spare time when I was living in North Wiltshire. It soon became clear that not all of these energy lines were the same as other energy lines, and they had different characteristics and different natures, and they could be split into different categories, if you like. And the people I was working with and sharing the hobby with, we ended up by differentiating them by calling them different names, so that we could tell what we were talking about. Essentially, there are two main categories: electromagnetic energies and low frequency sound based energies. But perhaps if I start with showing you the map and go on to there, looking at the characteristics of these lines.
Right.
We can progress from that. So if you bear with me a second. And
work some magic with technology.
See how we go from here.
There we go. I'm seeing that.
Can you see this?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, what you can see, this is North Wiltshire area. There's a couple of red lines there. This is the St Michael and St Mary energy lines that was mapped by Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst many years ago now. And they follow the straight ley line of the St Michael alignment, which runs sort of southwest northeast roughly across the south of England.
So you say straight ley line, that looks anything but straight, but these are the energies that wind round the ley line, aren't they?
Ley lines are straight, or leys originally, and they're alignments between sacred sites and topographical features, springs, mans, and that sort of thing. But a true ley line has a couple of these earth energy lines associated with it, which run along that alignment and along that direction, give or take a few curves and twists and bends on the way as they cross over and meet each other, like at Avebury and one or two other places. The other lines on the map are type 3 lines. We call the St Michael and Mary type 4 lines, and the type 3 lines are slightly more numerous. They're a lot more numerous, and they're in the blues. And they also run in pairs along alignments. And you can see there are a lot more of them. In around the Bath and the Chippenham area, I've included type 2 and type 1 lines just in those areas to give you an indication of the density of these energies, and the fact they're everywhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking at this, someone can very easily see that even if it's not one of the larger lines, all of us are living on or very close to some kind of energy line.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll show you some more maps in Bath in a minute, which will actually give you an indication that, there's probably 1 in 3 of us are going to be living on energies.
Wow.
And one of the features of these things is that they're actually getting wider as these new energies are coming into the Earth, which we'll come to a little bit later. Wow. If I just take you on to the next slide here, there. What drove me to try and understand what was causing these lines at the time led me to looking at the individual characteristics of a line. And every hour I noticed that the position of it changed slightly, and you can see this is an east-west line, and every hour on the scale on the vertical axis is centimeters. You can see the line shifts to the north and to the south and back again, and that creates a frequency. But this particular frequency of lines was associated with one group of lines, and we found other types of lines as well that had different types of frequencies. And here's one which slightly more higher frequency, but in this particular case they had different characteristics. And you can see halfway through the cycle a little mini peak would actually occur. So it would like be a reverse direction in the middle of the normal movement, and this gave it a certain characteristic. And after a while, we began to realize that this occurred exactly when there was a half moon. And as the mini peaks got bigger, they became, you can see here, they got bigger, and they became full peaks in their own right.
Yeah.
That's when there was a full moon. And so here we saw the beginnings of lines being connected to things like the moon, and indeed the next one we can come to here. This is the type 4, this was the St Michael line, not far from Melksham. And you can see here that it has a 12-hour movement one way and a 12-hour movement the other way. Very much a solar type connection, with the line moving to the furthest north, essentially at midday, and the furthest south at midnight. So this is 24-hour frequency here. And that led us to consider that this has a solar connection to these particular type 4 lines. Type 3 lines here are instantly more noticeable as that the frequency is faster, as it's like every 6 or 7 hours that these move side to side. And the 2 lines here are either side. So that's the sort of northern edge, that's the southern edge of the line, and then they shift ups and downs like that. So just from the frequencies of the lines and the widths as well, we were beginning to differentiate between the different groups. I'll just move on a bit further. There are some north-south lines which also exhibited something called a 24-hour flip, which is where the lines would move all the way across from the west to the east, and then would disappear, like starting off in the west again.
Like a rolling wave almost.
Yeah, and again it would start at midnight and go all the way across to midday, and then halfway across, then all the way to midnight again, and suddenly would lose it, and it would start again at the other side. And that very much looked like it was connected to the rotation of the Earth. So we're beginning to understand some of these characteristics linked to parts of the solar system, if you like.
Fascinating.
And this just carried on, and looking at these lines themselves here as a group of 11 lines, the frequencies are all similar. So if you take a group of lines like the type 3 lines and measure 11 of them every hour for a period of time, they're very similar in frequency, but they're not exactly the same. And moving on, we began to see that after a while, there were periods of time when these lines, actually just here, would all suddenly move exactly in the same point in time. They would reach the furthermost limit all at the same time, and then reverse direction all at the same time.
So it's like they all come into alignment.
Yeah, this particular set of lines, the type 3 lines, would do this, and they would have a period of 2 days when they were all completely in harmony, and that would happen probably every 8 to 10 days.
Right.
And all the different groups of lines had different times when they all came into harmony. And then it led to the discovery that 4 times a year, every single one of these lines came into harmony. And that led on to
all at the same time.
Yeah, that led on to discovering these energy shapes that occurred just before the equinoxes and solstices, which was covered in my book, Grail Found. But from the perspective of what I'm mentioning now, it helped us classify and differentiate between these different lines. And that led to looking at, well, what's causing them in a different way as well. So if we just move on to the next one here, I want to take this one. This is the type 3 lines in around the Bath area. This is from a slightly larger scale map. You can see the River Avon running through along this thin blue line here. But you've got these pairs of lines running in directions, a bit like waves crossing the landscape. And there's a few intersections in around the Bath area. If you zoom in, you get to the lower picture. You can't quite see the patterns that are made at this scale. That's because these type 3 lines aren't as numerous as some of the smaller lines, which are next. Here, you can see the type 2 lines in Bath, which again, you can see the patterns on the smaller scale, and again, the type 1 lines, and they have different features and characteristics from the type 2 lines. But you can see almost that there's a form of symmetry between the type 2 and the type 1 lines here.
Yeah.
It's like you could see them in the symmetry in the sort of type 3 lines back before. But when you start superimposing all of them over the same map, you can see, well, it's just a mess. There's no easy evidence of what's going on just looking at it. So you can't say that all the energies are the same when you look at that. They're actually separate grids, if you like, all superimposed on each one. So again, these grids have different reasons for being like that, and that differentiates them from the other grids. So again, when you're looking for an origin to it all, that's why you have to sort of map all the lines. This is an area I came to know really well. In fact, I run my dowsing courses here for the beginner, intermediate dowsing groups, and use these maps to show them when they find the lines. Well, this is where the lines are on the map. So, and in particular, we came across these moon phase lines. These are the ones which altered in direction halfway through at the half moon point. And these don't actually grid quite the same way. Okay, let's just go there. They don't grid quite the same way as the sound lines, which do all over in a point. These ones grid like an intersection, like a tic-tac-toe intersection. This further differentiated them from another group, and this is one of the differentiating factors that led to us thinking that they're electromagnetic in nature as opposed to sound-based in nature.
Right.
But these particular lines, the moon phase lines, or MP lines we call, are the ones which are causing huge problems for people when they live in these areas for too long. And you can see is this where geopathic stress, one of the causes of geopathic stress? Yeah, one of the causes, and there's a lot of indirectly related problems with these lines. If you've got water underneath the property as well, that will amplify issues. As well as a few other. It's a main part of geopathic stress, certainly, and then these lines are certainly something we can do something about. Which I'll go now, but if if you're looking at the consequences of what we're going to be talking about later in the talk, that you don't want to be living on these lines. You need to address this.
I think what you said there is very important. This is something we can do something about. So people like yourself who have a knowledge and understanding of this, you know how to harmonise, you bring these lines into harmony so they're not detrimental to humans.
That's one of the tools we can do to do that. You need to develop an awareness of these yourself. But we also offer quick location checks. People are now contacting us and just saying, can you just check my property?
Yeah.
We do that remotely, and sometimes we visit them. But that it gives them immediate peace of mind whether or not they're on an energy line or on some of these bad ones. I mean, these are ones where it's a recognized problem in Germany. Oncologists will tell their patients don't go home because they know particular areas where these energies are particularly bad. Because they've got several people in the same street with the same.
I know. There's some very serious research being done around this in Germany, hasn't there? Very serious. We're still struggling to catch up with the NHS on that score.
Well, they're going to have to catch up because this is another major problem. It's not just disease in physical health; it's mental ill health as well. And we talked earlier about the mind and how that is proving difficult for people in coping with regards to this seemingly okay for quite a few years. You can live on them for a while, but things are changing now. These energies are becoming much more powerful, and that's what's going to cause us problems. And that's what some people are beginning to sense. That's probably what we want to come to that in the talk. But that takes us to that looking at what are causing these particular lines. I can sort of come back off of that now. Before we get to the next part. So they're electromagnetic in nature or sound-based in nature, and they're coming from the center of the Earth, and we have to look at what's causing that and what's driving that. And in particular, the bigger lines are what's making some changes.
Okay, well, these bigger lines you call the Emperor Dragon lines, don't you?
Yeah.
They are not the Type 4s.
We call them Type 5 now.
Yeah.
There are very few of them in the world. Up until the beginning of this year, there were only 3 pairs. In January, a 4th pair appeared, and we began to think, well, what on earth is happening? Why are we suddenly getting another pair of Emperor Dragon lines? I mean, these are like twice the width of the Type 4 lines. They're much slower and lower in frequency. And
these are like real granddaddy lines in some ways.
Yeah, and they run through some fairly significant sacred sites around the world. And they're some real biggies. And, we've obviously mapped them around the world, and the new ones are coming in. We know there's 2 more coming in weeks, actually.
Wow. So actually, this is hugely significant because we're talking about the Earth's energy grid here. Yeah. And that is changing, that is shifting. Existing energy lines are getting bigger, new massive energy lines are coming in. So there really is, underlying this, there's a big story, isn't there?
Well, what's driving these energy lines on this is it's like these energies are like the representations we can perhaps most easily become aware of, but what's driving them is energy. It must be reaching the inner core of the Earth and being, well, my consider is that the inner core is a transducer. Let me just show you a slide on that, perhaps, and we can go to explain that one.
And for those who are not familiar with the word, a transducer.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't get anything there. I won't work out why. Let's just move on down to
there. Yeah.
Bear with me a second. Right. Yeah.
Earth.
Yeah. Transducers are little things which convert one form of energy to another. Typically, you'll find them in a microphone, where the sound energy is converted to electrical energy. Back at speakers, you'll take the electrical energy and turn it back into sound energy. And a very good transducer is iron and nickel. We know that the inner core of the Earth is iron and nickel. And all you've got to do is have energy coming into an iron nickel transducer, and it will convert that into other forms of energy like electromagnetic energy and low frequency sounds. What's particularly interesting about the inner core is that the iron and nickel content is magnetostrictive. It actually acts like a mechanical filter. It doesn't produce out loads of different frequencies. It's selective in its particular frequencies.
Right.
There's gaps between the frequencies. So there's areas where there's no sound, and there's other areas where there's groupings of sound. And this is exactly what we found with these different types of lines, type 3 and type 2, type 1. They have different frequencies and different groupings. And we call them eigenmode frequencies. So what we're finding on the surface is what we would expect if the inner core was acting as a transducer. And it's actually looking, some of the latest research is actually looking at things called neutrinos passing through the center of the Earth and being picked up in these large exploratory laboratories in Antarctica. There's one called IceCube that basically is picking up the way neutrinos are diffracted through the center of the Earth and in a way to.
And neutrinos are cosmic in origin, aren't they?
This is what's key to it all. The cosmic rays that we'll come to in a second, when they hit the Earth's atmosphere, they get turned into things like neutrinos and pass through the Earth. They're very, very small mass, no charge, and they travel almost at the speed of light and stop almost at nothing. But they're using transducers to measure these, which is really fascinating. So we're beginning to get a picture of what the inner core is like. But so
neutrinos, am I right in thinking that neutrinos, I mean, it's not that long since we discovered them or proved that they exist. Maybe a matter of 20 years or something.
Well, I'm not quite sure when they were first recognized, but they're sort of in sort of nucleus of an atom, really, without any charge. So they're definitely accepted science. Yeah. And the fact that it's got a cosmic origin is really important to us here because of what we'll come to in a minute. Yeah. But, just looking at the ways these sound waves, if you like, are expressed as a function of the spherical nature of them. So they're like bubbles of sound that bounce up from the center of the Earth, and they get reflected back off of all the different layers of the Earth. And this reflection set up standing waves. And when you have spherical standing waves of sound and a particular surface, you'll get a surface pattern of high pressure and low pressure zones. What you can see here is a model of high pressure, low pressure zones that you would expect with spherical standing waves. And you can see there the straight lines of high pressure and the intersections you'd expect. That's a model, but an example of what we could expect from one particular set of standing waves. And you're going to remember that we've got lots of different frequencies in groups, some of which are not good, well, a few which are not healthy for us at all. But when we're on an energy line, it affects us mentally and physically, both in good ways and bad ways. Again,
so for those who are listening in who've caught up with the fact that some of them are bad, also some of them are very beneficial.
They accentuate emotions. So you can actually get, if you're positive, very, very positive. If you're negative, you're going to get very depressed. But from some points of view, you can imagine some sounds are beautiful to hear, harmonious and wonderful sounds that you like. You could listen to all the time, whatever your particular enjoyment of music might be. So there are places on the Earth which can be retuned, if you like, harmonically, to produce wonderful environments. And that's already happened. People have worked on environments, and it's been shown to cut crime and improve attitudes between people. It has a very real effect. Again, mentally, this is the thing, mentally and emotionally on people. But again, I would point out that things are changing now. What was happening before was all very well, but there's much greater power now coming into the system because we've got an added cosmic element. For instance, in the type 4 lines, the St. Michael and Mary lines, there's an inner band. There's several bands within these lines, and there's a central band, which we think is related to the solar energies in particular. And the type 4, I think, is linked to the sun, from what we talked about the 24-hour movements backwards and forwards. And this central band has widened massively. We think that's because of the extra energies that are coming from outside the solar system connecting with the sun, and then being transmitted on a Irish or transformer effect to the center of the Earth, and then out again as these energies.
Yeah. So the power of what's reaching us is massively increased, and that in turn is affecting the lines on the surface.
And it's going to increase more. But we have to then ask, well, why is it increasing?
Yeah.
And this is the key thing where science can help us, and perhaps explain what is happening to us, and why some of the more sensitive people who are more aware are beginning to sense this change is happening. They're beginning to become more aware of it. So things you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah, because a lot of people think they're going nuts, basically, and it isn't that. There is something very real happening. It's not that we're all losing our minds.
Yeah, and we have to also bear in mind that this is what we think is the very first time mankind's going to go through this in such a big extent. It is cyclical, but in this particular case, and I'll perhaps come on to why it's so important in a second, but it's something that has happened in the past, but not to such a great extent because of the shields.
Yeah. And when you say has happened in the past, this was before mankind basically got up off his hind legs and.
Yeah, I think what we have to look at now is what we think is driving this. I mean, for sound energy to come out from the center of the Earth, you need constant energy coming into it.
Yeah.
You've got to look at where this energy must be coming from. Now, there's Earth energy itself, which is electromagnetic currents that are also produced in the outer core and things like that. So you've got electromagnetism already at the center, which can be converted, if you like, into sound energy. You've also got the cosmic rays from the sun. You've got the electromagnetic energies from the sun getting across to the Earth. That's another external source of energy. The third source of energy is galactic, and we think this is what's directly connecting to these Type 5 Emperor Dragon lines.
Right.
So it's like we had three sources of energy producing three major energy lines, the Emperor Dragons. We've now had a fourth sort of energy, galactic energy, coming through.
So what's caused that? Where's that come from? What's changed?
Well, there are three things happening at the moment which haven't happened for a long time. The first thing we've got to recognize is the Earth has a magnetic field. At the moment, we know it's lowering. It's coming down.
Yeah. Quite drastically from what I've heard.
Yes. We're about 300,000 years overdue what's called something called a magnetic reversal, when the North Pole and the South Pole switch. It will probably affect our weather, but it's not going to affect the spin of the Earth or anything like that. There might be some associated earthquakes and things like that, but physically I don't think this is going to be too bad. We could probably handle this, although mankind hasn't gone through a magnetic reversal.
Yeah, but it has happened before because it can be seen in the rock samples at various
Typically, if you look at the mid-Atlantic ridge, new magma coming up through the ridge cools and sets, and when it does, the iron minerals inside that cooling magma are like little magnets, and they point in the direction of the North Pole.
Yeah.
And you can measure the paleomagnetism of the rocks as they come up, and over the years, more magma comes up and spreads a bit more. More magma comes up and spreads, and then there's a period of time when the poles switch. So when you look at the magma that's coming up, it's not pointing to the north anymore, it's pointing to the south. It's bands either side of the ridge, so North Pole, South Pole. And roughly every 200,000 or 300,000 years, there's been a switch. We're overdue that now. But what's interesting is we begin to find out how these poles switch by looking at the sun. Not a lot of people know that the sun actually has magnetic poles, but they switch every 11 years.
Every 11 years?
Yeah, I know. And then there's a 11-year solar cycle as well, which is to do with sunspots. But the way the North and South Pole switch, you might think that it just rotates around like that. But no, in the sun, the North and South Pole begin to move around to meet each other. Okay,
oh, wow.
And it does that as the magnetic field of the sun weakens. And when they meet, you suddenly get another pole the other side starting up, and then it continues on its rotation.
Yeah, wow.
And then it starts strengthening the magnetic field again. And what we've got at the top of the Earth and the bottom of the Earth is that we've now found that not only is this magnetic shield of the Earth reducing rapidly, more so than we expect, the Antarctica pole, the South Pole of Antarctica, so it has left the continent of Antarctica now. It's gone that far away from the South Pole.
You're joking.
And the North Pole is heading rapidly towards the coast of Russia.
Wow.
It looks like we're about to head in the Jakarta region around Indonesia. And it's looking like another pole opposite that. It's sort of offshore Brazil pretty much is going to occur. And then once that happens, it's going to then shift finally around and complete shift in a similar way that the sun shifts in that sort of things. But the thing is that what assists with this shift is the weakening magnetic field.
Right.
So you've got a weakening sun's magnetic field at the moment, you've got a weakening Earth's magnetic field. And when you've got a magnetic shield like that, it protects us from the cosmic energies.
Yeah.
With the weakening shield, you're getting more cosmic energies coming through. And that then begins to have an effect on life, which I'll come to in a minute after I mention the third shield, which is which is the biggie. And the one which is more unknown, really. Perhaps I should come back to some slides and to show you some with that.
This is, I mean, it's quite mind-boggling, really, the implications of all of this.
So as you've got the sun's and Earth's magnetic fields rise and fall over time, which we know about, and you can see the sort of interaction between the shields here as well.
It's very beautiful.
And the next thing is we've found that with the Voyager probes and the IVEX probes that have gone outside the solar system, they were quite surprised. Scientists were quite surprised to find that there was a magnetic shield outside our solar system, which they've labelled the local interstellar cloud, the local cloud. And it appears that we're coming out of the cloud. And this means that the magnetic shield that the solar system's been in is lowering. In fact, we're almost completely out of it. So it's now we've got 3 shields coming down. More cosmic energy is coming through. Now, what we don't know about the local cloud is we've only got about 20 years measurements of us coming out of this, and we can't be too sure how long we've been in it. But it's we know space has got different magnetic areas in it, so we could be passing in and out of regions like the sun on a cloudy day. You see the sun go in and out of the clouds, and when it's coming out of the clouds, you get the full force of the heat and the light from the sun, and you might move back into the cloud. And it would appear that over time, we've got this mechanism which is shielding us from cosmic energies, and it's not shielding us from cosmic energy. But we've got 3 shields lowering down, and that's what's quite unique right now. So we're getting a lot more cosmic energies coming through. So we then have to look at, well, where are these cosmic energies coming from? Oh, I'm not quite there yet. Where are we going? Yeah, the cosmic cosmic energies come from active galactic nuclei that burst with regularity.
So these are like pulsing out.
They do pulse out, and they burst out a mixture of cosmic rays, gamma rays, neutrinos. But these pulses send huge waves out into the universe on a very regular basis. And I don't quite know the differences in timescale between them all, but we're going to be affected by them as they hit. And the fact that we are affected by them can be seen in ice cores. Look at some ice core samples here. Over the last 9,000 years, you see a slightly increasing amounts of beryllium-10, which is an isotope which is associated with cosmic rays, and it's stored in the ice in Greece, in Greenland, and in Antarctica. So you can measure the levels of beryllium-10 to work, and that actually gives you an indication of the amount of cosmic rays we've had in the past. You can see some cycles over thousands of years, backwards and forwards, up and down. If you take a look at the last 1,000 years, you can see the peaks and troughs here as well. So we've had high levels and then low levels of cosmic rays. And then over the last 300 years at the bottom, you can begin to see cycles as well. So there's cycles within cycles of levels of cosmic rays. But of course, you have to consider this in connection to the local cloud. So you could have a huge wave of energy coming from a galactic outburst, but that'd be completely shielded by our 3 shields. So we wouldn't be affected that much. So what we're picking up on the ground here is you've got to consider has several other factors that can contribute to how much dosage we're going to get. And what it appears to be happening is because our shields are lower, and we're coming into a new wave of energy from a galactic outburst, if you like. Paul Violette calls them super waves. We're going to get dosed with a large amount of these galactic energies, and you can look back at the past over 140,000 years, again at ice cores. And what we do know about cosmic energies is that it can lead to big changes of life on the Earth. We know that...
Does this equate to the various extinction processes? Because we're supposedly coming into the sixth extinction, aren't we?
Well, we don't really want to think about a sixth extinction.
Rather not.
But one of the strange things about geology was after an extinction event, there's always a flourish of life with new life forms. And evolutionists were really quite confused as to how that could happen so quickly. Why would you suddenly get a burst after an extinction when you're left with just one or two life sort of forms on the planet? You would expect evolution and survival of the fittest to take time to adapt and grow to the new environments, and you have slow exponential growth in new life forms. But in actual fact, what we find is an absolute explosion after an extinction event. And it could be that the nature of these extinction events, if they're associated with the high levels of cosmic energy, is that one of the things we find is that cosmic rays can mutate DNA.
Right.
It's measured it in bacteria to mutate bacteria.
Yeah.
It kills bacteria as well, so it has an extinction possibility as well as mutating and life-giving.
So there are two ways that it can go. You can either be killed off by these cosmic energy, or you will effectively change at some level. You'll mutate into a different kind of life form. Yeah,
and then life has sort of evolved throughout Earth for millions of years. It will have learnt to cope with most amounts of this cosmic energy and shielded to an extent, so that it's not going to be wiping us completely out, but it's going to lead to sort of changes. So we've got to ask, well, what sort of changes can this lead to? And we can begin to see some of the research done on cosmic energies is actually quite positive, and some of it is perhaps not so positive. A chap called Roland McCratty, scientist, has done studies on this in California, and found that cosmic rays actually can alter the brain and the mind and our perception of reality. It can have an increased positive effect on something called HRV, HRV, heart rate variability. That essentially is measuring the gaps between our heartbeats, that period of time, and then the next period of time between the next two heartbeats, and how that varies along the way. And the high heart rate variability is a good sign of health. It means your heart can react quickly to new environments. And one that's not healthy, and healthy heart's not healthy, is one that's slow to react to environmental changes. In fact, it takes a while for your heart rate to come back down to normal after exercise, for instance. So high heart rate activity, heart rate variability, it was shown to be connected to high cosmic rays that lead to high HRV. So there's definitely a physical effect on us, and there's definitely a mental and perception effect, which is actually beginning to what we see being reported in some of the prophecies with regards to the elders, like healthy elders, saying that this is happening in our lifetime. It's going to affect us mentally, and our perception of reality is going to be changed because of this.
Yeah, because this is the fascinating thing. Despite the fact mankind's never been, or at least as far as we're aware, never been through one of these, there are plenty of prophecies that have been around now for thousands of years, in some cases, that tell of this.
Yes. Yeah, there's a surprising number of them that are connected, not just to how we're going to be affected, but also with connections to these energy lines as well. How they have an important part. They're like our signposts to these changes. And I think the ancients knew these signposts.
Yeah,
they sensed these energies were changing. There was a connection to the associated more impactful cosmic energies which are coming through. Yeah. Just a couple of more peaks here, looking back 12,000 and 3,000, 34,000 years ago. These peaks in cosmic energies just here and here, shown in the ice core samples, matched leaps in human technology and art, for instance.
Right. Yeah. So when we talk about this being an evolutionary wave of energy, this is what we mean.
Yes, it's not, as I said, an extinction event, although it's likely to cause some problems. I don't think Japanese popping up. I'm not sure you get the pop-ups or not.
Not this end.
Not this. So we can look at these from a positive point of view, although they're not going to be perhaps positive for everybody. So we actually almost have a choice as to how we cope with this. And that's rather an interesting sort of message that sort of comes away with it when you start looking at not just the prophecies, but the indications from the seers and the sages over the years as to how we must prepare for these things.
Okay. And I know you've studied this, you've done a lot of work around this. So what are they saying? What is the advice to us?
Well, you can imagine there's an awful lot of this, and you have to sort of think, well, what do we check? What do we not check?
Yeah.
What do we chuck out as well? And what do we trust from all our own senses? One of the interesting characters, Rudolf Steiner, was aware of these changes. He split it up into several epochs, post-Atlantean epochs, where he noticed that our consciousness was changing as we moved away from the Atlantean epoch, and now as we move back to an environment which is more like the times of the Atlantean epoch, and how that we're taking advantage of the way our mind is changing to learn the lessons that we're supposed to learn, if you like, and prepare for the next epoch. So he's talking about a form of change of consciousness, and without going into too deep, I do go into a bit more deeply in my book Grail Bound, and again in the Grail seminars that I run. That's when we dissected even more detail. But it looks as though our awareness is coming back of other people's feelings when people are lying to us. It's almost like the telepathy is coming back, and a bit more clairvoyance, or our psychic nature, if you like, is coming back.
Yeah.
And we've become more connected from a point of view of
because there is I don't know what you call it, a story, a myth, that at one stage the human race was very telepathic, empathic and psychic and everything like that, and it's something we lost.
Yes.
And so you're saying that the potential is that this is coming back to us with all these changes.
What we have to consider is, well, that maybe this extra cosmic environment that we've got with these extra rays are coming in are going to have an effect on our minds in a way that used to have a effect.
And our DNA, because there's plenty of our DNA that isn't being used. It's called junk DNA, isn't it, at the moment? And
could we waiting to be activated? It could be being activated as we speak.
Yeah.
With these cosmic rays, these neutrinos, whatever is affecting us, but it's coming directly to us through from the galaxies, through the solar system. It's coming via the sun.
Yeah.
Coming via these low frequency sounds that we're on top of, where we're located. And I think one of the things we have to remember right now is that we're a lot more populated in this earth than we were before. And the ancients never used to live on these sacred sites, and they wouldn't. The energies were too strong there. We are now so populated in some areas that we can't avoid living in some of these places, which really aren't good for us.
Yes.
If I move to the country,
the right part of the country.
So you're going to be tested mentally. In the coming years, and then because the big question, of course, is when.
And I think one of the interesting things this raises is that, I mean, as a species, the vast majority of us don't cope well with change. We kind of like things to kind of we like our comfort zone to remain fairly stable, and that is not, everybody just needs to get their head around the fact that what is now is not what is going to be, and you just have to kind of man up for the fact that you're going to have to become flexible and move with things, because my sense is it's the resistance a lot of people are having against, are trying to resist this, the change that's coming through, trying to resist the energies. And this is what's causing a lot of the problems people have, the health problems, the mental problems in particular.
Well, no one expects you to go out and run a 10-kilometer race, or just try and run 10 kilometers when you've not practiced for it, you're not trained for it.
Yeah.
And that seems to be quite fairly well accepted. Well, obviously, if I'm going to do a 10K race, I'm going to start running and practicing and get slightly better. This is kind of like a mental challenge which is coming up. And in the same way, people don't seem to think that your mind needs to be used as a muscle.
It does.
And you don't need to exercise your mind. But you know, if you're going to be affected by the mind, you know, you're going to be in that race whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
It's nice to have prepared and trained for it. And that includes training your mind. Literally, one of the things that we look at in some of the practical exercises I do in the seminar is how do we move from being negative to positive? So we really take people into a very highly negative state, leave them there for long, but we try and get them to being very positive.
Yeah.
And it's the speed with which you can move from negative to positive that's critical.
Yeah. So, and this is something that you can practice. It's something you make choice about.
Yeah.
Because so many people think this just happens to them. Oh, it's bad luck. Oh, it's good luck. It's not. This is something you can take control of and you can master.
Well, it is, but it's like saying to somebody who's, you know, like 5 stone overweight, saying, look, there's a marathon, you can run it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you're going to have difficulties. I mean, you can just imagine being angry, and there's a huge amount of anger in the world.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, well, you've got 5 seconds to feel love.
Might take a little longer.
How do I do that?
Yeah.
How do I take that process through? And you might get there in an hour.
Yeah.
You might do it faster.
Yeah.
But take fear. You know, how do you move from fear to a non-fear-based feeling of security?
Yeah, and we are bombarded by fear. That, I think, is one of the major energies around at the moment.
Yeah. So how do you feel confidence and have self-esteem? How do you move from despair to positive expectation and hope? Well, you can't do it unless you start training as though you're running for a 10K race. So
this really comes under what can we do to prepare for this? So I know you have solutions. You're not just telling us about problems. You've got all sorts of solutions. So let's start on that. I suppose the first one is to understand the nature of what we're looking at. And my background was coaching. Strangely enough, apart from after I left geology, I became a coach, and we use a model called the GROW model, which is establishing what the goals are, what the reality is. The R, O is the options, and W is looking at which way is the best way to go forward. The key thing to this is the reality. Everything revolves around what the reality is right now. That's not just in yourself, but in the world around you. And I suppose the first thing you can do is to look at some of the videos on these subjects. You go to my website, you'll see some videos on this, and that'll be directing to other videos. Read some of the books, some of mine, some of others. Let's just, I want to take a moment just to mention the books, because I think it's important people are aware of them. So far, we've got Grail Bound and Grail Found, which gives some of the background to this, because there's a huge amount of background to this. We're kind of skipping along mountaintops in the way we're speaking, aren't we? And if people want the detail, it's going to be found in those 2 books, which they can get through your website. They're not on Amazon, they're through your website. No, those ones are just through the website. And it may seem strange to bring the Grail in at this point, but it was the journey that I was taken on to trying to discover what these lines were, and it stemmed from an expedition to southeast Spain, where there was a huge intersection of these type 5 lines, which we need to investigate. And finding that intersection and where that was, which was the site of an ancient Bronze Age city, the largest Bronze Age city on the mainland the archaeologists have ever found. And they completely stumped as to why it was there, but that's another story you'll find in the book. But those lines, these big ancient lines, they ran through some incredible sites. And just the east-west ones running through across the south of Spain. The numbers of ancient megalithic sites, hypogeums, there's just lists of them. I had an amazing trip there last Christmas and New Year, just looking at where these lines went.
and came across a chap called Andrew Barker, who's also put a lot of time into looking at these ancient sites. And he actually came to me and said, you know, why have I got all these sites in a line? And I said, well, have a look at this. and all these sites just fitted the corridor where this Emperor Dragon was. But then following it north, and we came across Templar sites, almost unknown Knights Templar sites, and it looked as though they had to be looking for the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
And why they were looking for it was the advantages that could be had meditating and praying on these sacred sites, which is what they began to explain in some of the symbols that they left behind. And that's what the Grail found. It was about a journey, and a personal journey to become a better knight, to become a better person, to become more enlightened. It included things like manifestation, the law of attraction, the secret, modern day secret, healing, and nourishment. And that was a story that began to lead through into also understanding what these Emperor Dragons were. And also where you find them running through other places around the world. It's connected up all the cultures.
Yeah.
And the cultures all have their own versions of this. And then you begin to see, well, the snakes and the dragons are synonymous with these earth energy lines in South America and China and Australia and other areas around the world. This is something which led back to ancient cultures, and ancient prophecies emerged from that with the sayings. And then what do we get from there? The Grail Bound was then the second book that came out, which was investigating some of these prophecies, like the Inca Quera prophecy in South America, in Peru, which talk about these actual energies coming back. And the intersections being these sacred sites, which opened up portals or lines of communication to other worlds. And then thinking, well, what are these other worlds? How can you have other worlds? And you begin to see that some of the new science emerging is explaining these are different existences for the mind on different matter frequency systems within the same area of space. And then a lot of things begun to make sense when you realize, actually, well, one of the key taboo subjects that you're not allowed to discuss in the world is what happens at death. And it appears that the mind continues on in these other existences, and there's just huge amounts of evidence, which is all the mainstream scientists and religions are trying to cover up. But that then led to understanding more about what the peoples around the world were saying. The Hopi Indians in North America, they had sayings there. They're talking specifically about the Blue Kachina prophecy, when the arrival of the twins came after the blue star and the seen in the sky, which we think could be a supernova, but the arrivals of the twins, Palangahoya and Pogangahoya, were just two gods for the North Pole and the South Pole. One was the god of sound, one was the god of matter. And
it's pennies start to drop, don't they?
Yeah, and when you hear that these gods are likened to energies, the North and South Pole one was what kicked it off, because they tell me the statement says is that after 7 years after that we'll reach the golden age. Well, the two new energies that came through at the beginning of this year ran between the North and South Pole.
Right, so we are in the end phase of this prophecy.
If the Hopi say it'll happen in a lifetime, they say 7 years. If they're right, and they may be out 1 or 2 years, who knows? That puts it at 2024.
Right.
The Indian Maitreya prophecy also talks about the end of the Kali Yuga, the coming of the Satya Yuga, which is the golden age. And there's several other prophecies mentioned in the book, which I won't go into, which seem to support the same thing. Even Goethe's Johann Wolfgang Goethe wrote a fairy tale called The Green Snake. Called the fairy tale, but the subtitle was The Green Snake and the Beautiful Lily. And that too can be interpreted as a prophecy at the end of the book, which relates to a bridge between the land of the spirit and the land of the senses. And the key thing integral to this prophecy was the green snake. And for years, even Goethe wasn't quite sure what it meant, because some of it came to him in a dream and a vision. But Rudolf Steiner, anthroposophy fame, spent years trying to understand and interpret the fairy tale, but missed out the connection between the green snake and the beautiful lily being energy lines and earth energy shapes. And the key message that came from that book was the only thing that knew about when this was going to happen was the green snake. So it's like, it's telling us that the only thing it's going to let you know is the energy lines.
Yes.
And the way they change. And we're getting these changes now with these energy lines. The extra energy is widening them all through the central band. But they're affecting more people. We're sensing it. And where we're located, we're going to feel it.
Yeah.
If we're on some of these.
So this is like a very, very serious tap on the shoulder. Oi, pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I'm trying to get across is this need to do gatherings and group meditations. And we've got meditations going on all around the world.
Yeah.
Which is great.
So coming back to what we can actually do. I mean, obviously, we need to kind of mentally toughen up. We need to sort of start. I don't know. Exercising our minds differently to the way they're being used now. You talked about sacred sites. Is there something that, well, I know there's a lot being done at these sacred sites, but how much of it is
well, it's quite
worthwhile?
Yeah, once you found a sacred site, which is probably the difficult bit, which I'll come to in a minute, it's very much a simpler connection of being there and getting into an existence state of feeling love, coming into you and going out to you. It's something which all people from all religions, all philosophies can do.
Yeah.
It's just a state of mind, of feeling.
There's nothing religious about this.
It doesn't have to be. You can certainly come collectively. I mean, a group of Christians or a group of moderate Muslims could come together and do the same thing and have the same effect.
Yeah.
Because they're essentially creating a state of love.
Yeah.
The teachings amongst all these communities is one of love.
Yeah.
If they're following that, then they're going to be doing what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
And
this is where what you were saying about getting mastery of your emotions, so you can actually you can flip yourself into this higher state very quickly is important.
Yeah. The speed with which you can get into this state is unfortunately driven by your ability to be going from extremes.
Yeah.
It's not going to get you there if you're just going from mild discomfort to mild comfort. To experience the intense positive, you must experience the intense negative.
Yeah, there's got to be the two ends of the
difference between the two is the important. It's that gulf you have to transverse, if you like, really quickly. Yeah. So you have times when you're wanting to murder everybody. You want to push the button and wipe everybody out. From that to a point where it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah, you just love the world.
And that is not easy to do quickly. But that's the mental fortitude we need to build.
Yeah, and it's not called mastery for nothing.
No, but the point about being at these sacred sites is that allows you to experience the extreme positive.
Yeah.
And what you can get from being collectively feeling that intense positiveness at that point is a huge anchor, a line in the sand, peat on in the cliff, if you like, that's going to keep you at a focus point where you can reach.
Yeah.
And you need to start off with that positive point, and then you go to the negative and move back to that positive. So it's coming together at these sacred sites is becoming critical. And what we learned from the Templars and the ancient Hebrews was when to do this. And that was an important thing, just covered in the Grail. Okay. Yeah, so, and then again, where these sites are is a trickier one, because that's involving finding out where these energy lines are, where they intersect, and finding particular intersections too. That's part of my work now is doing that. An example, I've really just come back from a couple of weeks ago from Belgium, where a group of people over there asked me to find a really powerful sacred site over there that could come and join in meditation. And we did. We found the Emperor Dragons. One particular one ran south of Brussels and just south of a town called Leuven. And found out where the node was and made people over there aware of it, and they were meditating on it.
So it's, I mean, we can interact with these energy lines, particularly at the nodal points.
Yeah.
And so if we can get the right state of, I don't know, what would you call it, grace?
No, just positive expectation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strong self-esteem, confidence.
Yeah.
Peacefulness, joy.
And that does that feed back into the energy line, into the energy grid?
It's a two-way process.
Process.
You see, what I haven't mentioned is this whole concept of sound seems to have a connection to consciousness itself and universal consciousness. Although there's a science I haven't talked about, there's a new science which kind of explains that the creation of the universe starts from vibration and sound, which has an intelligence. And the creator of this, just mentioned in Grail Bound in the appendix, gives you a quick rundown on this theory and how intelligence can arise from the void, which goes on to create everything. And that sounds like a bit religious, and that, but there is a scientific base to what he's discussing.
Yeah.
So sound and consciousness is inextricably linked. So when you're connected to sound, your consciousness, which is part of the universal consciousness, is connecting to the universal consciousness at this point. And that's where you're drawing sustenance and you're becoming connected to this whole thing. So what it appears to be is that these cosmic energies, if you like, that are coming through is lowering our perceptual barriers that allows us to connect more deeply. And the more deeply we connect, the more benefit we can get. Right. It's almost like that connection, which is which is what the ancient seers and teachers and prophets have been telling us about in the past.
Yeah.
Even Steiner talks about the streams of energy and the impulse you get, the Christ impulse you can get from the energy. And there are other words people use. And the impulse comes from the connection, the conscious connection that we make. But you can only really do that or learn in any meaningful way when you're at a very strong site.
Yeah.
Where all these perceptual barriers are broken down more easily, which happens to be a symmetrical node of earth energies. But finding where these are, I mean, we're beginning to find more of them, but it takes time, and there's a cost to time.
Yeah.
So, we have a service which we have a few of us that can find this and do things. So contact us if you're interested in doing that, or find people who can do this for you. You know?
Like that's important, is that actually we need more yous basically coming forwards, as it were, to if this is going to expand sort of globally.
Well, I think there are people who've got the same capability as I have in different countries, better than mine. The thing is, we're not aware of who they are or why we should do it.
Yeah.
I can't run around the world trying to fix this, and I shouldn't be doing that. There are people who are already doing massively good things with group meditations. There are people who are doing great things on grids and light workers around the world. It's about the understanding of the importance of this, so that Geopathic, if you like, realize actually this is something I need to get involved with.
Yeah.
I need to connect up with these people. This actually got a highly beneficial, not just for myself, but for my family, for mankind.
Yeah.
And
so that's, one of the reasons for doing this interview and is to try to get the message out to a broader audience, basically the understanding out to a broader audience. So, part of this is people please share and share and share and share. And then let's start to make the connections, basically.
Yeah, it is very much that. It builds your awareness, understanding. I've tried to put some books together. I've got some courses to learn how to do awareness courses and dowsing courses, and come along by all means. I can do what I can. Other people who are interested or who can do this will make contact, basically.
Yeah. Can we talk before we end? Can we just talk a little bit about exactly what you're doing? Because I know you've mentioned the Grail seminars, and you've mentioned that you run dowsing courses, because dowsing is an important aspect of being able to work with and find these lines, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more than just that, though. The whole dowsing thing is a connection between the conscious and the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
It's learning to become more aware, learning when to be focused, and switching from high focus to high awareness state. And that connects the conscious and the subconscious mind. We already have a connection. When we go to sleep at night, we can wake up at say 5 in the morning if we instruct our subconscious mind to wake us up at 5 in the morning. So there's a connection that's going on. We need to tap into that connection, and dowsing does do that in a much more frequent way. So we can get answers, we can get messages, if you like, from our subconscious, which, if you accept is connected to everything, is a way to communicate with the universal consciousness, and that is a key part to it all as well. So raising awareness, even of nature, when you do the dowsing as well, that's a big part of you tuning into what's going on and being ready for these changes, which are definitely going to happen. They've started happening, and well, look, it's like you've got a date for 10K to race.
Yes.
You
will be running it whether you want to or not, so you might as well.
Well, there's another aspect to this, which is a bit. You can walk a 10K race, but we liken it to surfing a little bit. I don't know if you've ever tried surfing.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it looks.
No, and you see the wave coming, and one of the first problems that you realize you have is that if you're not paddling fast enough, you're not going to catch the wave. It'll just pass underneath you.
Yeah.
So you need to be paddling with the wave, and you see the surfers at the last minute, they paddle really, really fast. They jump up onto their board, and if they do it too soon, they miss the wave. If they don't paddle fast enough, they don't catch the wave. So you can't walk the 10K.
So timing is everything.
You're not going fast enough. You've got to start at the start, and you've got to run. Not too fast, because you won't make it. But you can't walk either, because you'll miss it. So that's the surfing analogy, and the waves are coming.
So this is where you're saying, develop your sensitivity. That this is where it becomes really important that you can feel into this and you can move with it and
but it's about the control of your sensibility. You can't switch that off at times. That could be bad too. So it's again the control over your emotions. And ability to put the barriers up, to go with the flow. We need to go with the flow, to move quickly from the negative to the positive, and that takes practice. And I'm developing exercises that hopefully by the end of next year we'll be ready to run classes and to spread the word in that way. But
is this the Grail seminars that you mentioned?
We'll start them in the Grail seminars, but they're for people to just share and to try.
Okay, so people need to sort of basically keep in touch with your website to see what's coming.
There's a newsletter on the website. Sign up to the newsletter. You're going to get you'll get a blueprint for life sent to you, or you can download, which is an take on what life may be about. And then if you're interested, there's videos to watch on there. That might interest you some further. If you're keen to get involved more, then buy the books, read the books. And you begin to see some sort of interests or area interests, and you can pursue the direction you feel you need to go in after that. Certainly come to the Grail seminars, but the seminars you really do need to have read the books, because we start you already running into some fairly, they go into much more detail than the actual...
so you need to have that foundation in place.
And then the dowsing courses are there, but probably the first thing everyone should be doing is checking where they live. And how, because
are you on an energy line? Is it affecting?
Well, are you getting nowhere with your current ways of handling your ill health? Is something not working? Have you tried tackling something already in a more orthodox manner, and it doesn't happen, doesn't work? Are you repeatedly getting problems? So actually, well, maybe it's where you live, or maybe you're noticing a change because of where you live as well. A lot of people buy houses and they have a sense, and they have a feeling whether they like the house or not. And the whole concept of feng shui is a similar sort of thing. You're sensing the energies. Is it a good feeling? Is it a bad feeling? But that's gone out the window for
unfortunately. Feng shui is a very serious sort of methodology, and teaches an amazing awareness of energy, and yet somehow in the West we've belittled it to sort of putting the toilet seat down. It's ridiculous.
Well, there's no scientific basis behind it, or hasn't been. So they've dismissed it. Well, this is just rubbish. You can't measure it, so it doesn't exist. Well, sorry, the reason you can't measure it with your electronic devices is because these frequencies are too low.
Yeah.
And you don't have devices going down that far just yet. Having said that, there are ways we're looking at now that will be able to measure them.
Yeah.
Which I won't go into because that's a lot longer. But they're very real, and it's having an effect on us.
Yeah.
And we're going through these changes, and we need to do something. And I'm grateful you've given me a chance to tell people to look further into it, really.
Yes, well, it seems to me like this is one of the major stories of our time. You know, forget Brexit and everything else. This is really where the attention should be. But so few people know about it, and it is one of the things I love about. I mean, it just strikes me that you were the right person at the right time in the right place with the right set of qualifications to start to unpack this, because I couldn't have done it because I don't understand geology, and you know, on and on and on it goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you picked it up. God bless you. You've run with it, and you've made sense of it. But we need other people now to sort of come on board.
Other people have got to be aware of it and run with it the way they're supposed to run with it. But I do want to leave you on one positive note. You know, I look at all the rubbish that's going on in the world, and I think, well, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah,
it's being taken care of. This is going to take care of it. This is going to be our positive way out.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about Brexit. You don't have to worry about what crazy people do running certain parts of the world are doing.
Yeah.
You know, yes, there's some horrible things going on, but in many ways, it's these horrible things are going on because people don't understand the way they're thinking and they feel it, because it's affecting everybody. And people are behaving more irrationally. I mean, can you imagine walking down the street and suddenly dreaming and not being where you are? We're going to be moving in and out of dreams. Our perception of reality is going to be challenged.
Now, I've heard people talk about interdimensional shifts. Will that be part of it?
I don't use the word interdimensions. I think we've got 3 dimensions and that's it. Right. I'm not a fan of relativity at all. I follow more the electric universe theory. I don't like the Big Bang theory. That's got too many flaws. It's riddled with problems. And there's better theory of creation, which I mentioned in the appendix.
Yeah.
But we do have different matter frequencies.
Yeah.
We just as we see within a narrow range of visible light, and we hear a narrow range of sound, we feel, I think, within a narrow range of matter frequencies. And yet there are other matter frequencies on different levels, which our mind can be more tuned to in certain places under certain circumstances. And that's probably where our mind moves to when the physical body passes and dies. And that opens up a whole new area of other worlds, which we just can't go into. It explains so many things.
Absolutely.
But you're then talking into heresies of science, because you still have the religionists who are not the religionists of relativity religionists, and they're high priests who've resorted to saying, you have to believe us when we talk about multiverses and multi-dimensions.
Yes. Yeah.
Why do we have to believe a physicist? You know, they should be talking science. They shouldn't use the word beliefs. We shouldn't listen to an opinion from them.
Yeah.
Well, this is the facts. This is what we observe. You know, and unfortunately, they've lost doing that. They've become crazies. So, which is unfortunate. But,
it is. It is. I don't know. We've covered so much. Is there anything more that needs to?
Thank you very much for giving me a chance to make people aware of this, and please look into it more if you find something there.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is thank you, Rory. I mean, over the years you've been putting together, amazing work, and I know all at your own expense and cost and things like that. So again, maybe that's an appeal I can make on your behalf, is that if there's anybody out there with a spare few dollars around who would contribute to just sustaining this work, because it can't go as fast as it otherwise might.
Yeah, well, I'd love to be able to do more work and get around, but yes, time is time
and money, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
So we're help in any way. If you want sacred sites, if you want beautiful locations from a sound point of view, yeah, we do that. I had a lot of fun earlier this year with a 2,000-acre estate in the UK, and that place is humming now. Wildlife seems to be attracted to it.
Yeah.
More So there's some fantastic things which are really enjoyable to do, but we need people to be aware of it and want that, and want to drive change in their area as well. And like the people in Belgium were really keen to get me across to work over there, and that's starting something over there now. So yeah, I'm just opening up to possibilities and see where it goes. But thank you very much.
Well, folks, you know, it's up to all of us. Rory's given us the signposts and the pointers, and he's working as hard as he possibly can to sort of make things happen, but we all need to join in. So thank you very much, Rory. And once again, you know, from my heart, thank you for all the work you're doing. And yeah, no doubt we'll talk again sometime.
Oh, that'd be lovely, Sarah. Thank you very much. Thank you.